evening. Thank you. My name is Ken Sobon, and I'm also, in addition to, well, if you read my bio, I sit on the board of California Audubon, and I represent all the Northern chapters. And I sit vice president of Altacal in Chico, and I'm a middle school teacher. So I have a fair amount of experience with Zoom, and I really appreciate when I see a few faces. So Ryan promised that he'd leave his face on, but it's nice to actually be teaching to people, and so thank you. What we'll do is, what we'll do is, if you have questions, put them in the chat, and then Ryan will pass them over to me at the end. And if there are some issues, technical issues, Ryan said he'd monitor the chat also, so I can fix the issue, make sure that it's working just fine.
Yep, absolutely correct.
We'll just admit these last couple people. So nice to meet you. I've been the director of the Northern Saw-whet Owl Research and Education Project in Chico, and just outside of Chico in Forest Ranch. So that's technically where our station is, in Forest Ranch. So I'll start the presentation, and then let's share my screen, and then we'll get going here. Desktop number 2. And play. Okay. So Ryan, are we good? You have just the screen, no notes, correct?
Yeah, looks great.
Perfect. Okay. So this is the owl, and I'm pretty darn partial with these guys. I think they've got to be the cutest owl ever. So I'm quite partial to the saw-whet owl. They're quite common, and they are considered the most plentiful owl in North America, and the most studied owl in North America. So some of you may have heard about this guy. This owl was found in a Christmas tree in Rockefeller Center, and when they brought the owl over, and when this happened, I got text messages from friends and everyone that knew I studied owls. Is this your owl? Is this the owl you study? So this is a famous little guy. He stayed in the tree even though the tree fell down, and was shipped all the way to Rockefeller Center. And so these are called Northern Saw-whet owls. So as I mentioned, they're the most frequently banded owl in North America. And the average age, and we're part of a project that's called Project OwlNet. And Project OwlNet was started by Scott Weisenthal, which you're going to see next month. And it's a project where there's 200 plus owl stations, and we all study the migration pattern and nesting patterns of this little guy here. And you can see how small he is compared to my thumb. You can see the band on his leg. In this project, the average age of encounter is 1.9 years. And the longevity record is 9 years and 5 months. So the oldest one that Project OwlNet or banders in North America have captured is 9 years and 5 months. So it breeds, if you look at the picture, year-round, the purple. So it breeds in the Northern Cascades, and even in your area, it's considered, a year-round. And yeah, technically just up the hill from Forest Ranch. On our side of the valley. Generally, it breeds from about 4,300 to 7,000, but in the coastal range, it's a little different. We have just one station in the coastal range, and that's up near Blue Lakes, up Eureka. So take a look at this guy, this little video clip. So pretty precious little guy here. So the name, where does the name come from? Well, there's a couple theories. One of them is from the French word for owl, which is, I I'll butcher it, Cholet. Anyway, the French word for owl kind of sounds like saw-whet, and the other could be something with the sound that he makes, kind of like the screech of a wet saw. So the male owl here sings in the early spring, and generally they stay on territory. When we capture these guys, we capture less males and female, and the theory is because they are staying on the territory. Typically, well, they're cavity nesters, but not cavity roosters. So like a screech owl will roost in a cavity. Whether a pygmy owl cavity that the pygmy owl or pileated woodpecker, rather, that a pileated woodpecker made, or a flicker cavity. These guys will nest in. And look at all the prey. He's sitting on some eggs, and he's got plenty of voles. And that's one of their favorite foods that they eat is mice, deer mice, and voles. Almost entirely, they eat rodents. So some owls, like the flammulated owls, will eat moths, but these guys eat rodents. Typically, they're monogamous. So one male will be on territory, the female will come into that territory, and they'll mate and have a clutch. But they've been known to double clutch and even triple clutch. So the female will nest with 3 different males in 3 different locations. So that's been documented, but generally, mostly it's just one male. The female will incubate 5 to 6 eggs, and it takes about a month for them to hatch and about another month for them to fledge or to fly away. These owls will show what's called reverse dimorphism. So, with mammals, humans like us, the male is larger than the female generally. With owls, they're the opposite. So the females are larger. They're up to 50% larger than a male. Both sexes, like the males will be, if we look at just weight, the males will be around 70 or 80 grams, and the females will be about 90 to 105 grams in mass. So as I mentioned, the food, that's one of their favorite foods, that vole there. And they have these talons that you can see there. And sometimes when I'm working with these guys, I'll get scratched or taloned. And what they do is they don't just close the talon, tip to tip. They kind of overlap to kind of hold on to their prey. And they hold on. They don't let go. Every owl that I work with, and you've seen some of the pictures already, they look different. I've gotten used to their faces, but this one, I can tell by the size, is a female, and she's feisty. So sometimes they're real feisty. Sometimes they're just real relaxed and chilled. Now their prey, the voles, are 50 grams. So if a male is 70 grams, that's pretty close to its body weight that he's taking. So they're strong flyers. They're nocturnal. They do all their hunting at night. Now, some of the calls. So as I mentioned, where the name came from, and we'll listen to see, here's a male call. So we'll play that call. Let's see if it's over there. We'll play that call to lure them in. There's some chirps and barks, and then a wail. So there was chirps, barks, and a wail. That's a female solicitation. Hey baby, come on over here. And so those are some of the calls that they exhibit. When we're bringing those owls in, and I'll talk about why we do what we do, but when we play that call. It's similar to a northern pygmy owl, except that it's almost the same tone, except a pygmy owl, there's like a 1 second is and saw-whets have a rapid repeating. So Project OwlNet and is a project with, it's over 200 banding stations, and we can see some of the stations here. Good covered in the east, but just a few stations in the west. And you can see my station is that red dot on the right side of the valley, and then there's a station near the coast in Eureka. And your area, your county needs some saw-whet stations. So we need to get some bird banders out there and have them start banding, because I'd love to get some more data from that part of the coastal range. I have a colleague that opened up a station in the Napa, Napa, and then also in the area of Mount Diablo. So she's got a couple stations there. And we can see the different stations. Yeah, now these owls, where do they come from? What do they do? Well, we know that they breed up in the northern region, that dark green. We know they also breed in our Sierras, and we believe in the coastal range. But there's no significant difference between the owls on the east and the owls on the west, and that's the mitochondrial DNA. So they've done some sampling and compared the DNA of the owls and throughout the country, and they found there's no significant difference, and that tells us that there's mixing, that these owls mix around. And so what they're considered as opportunists. They're following the prey. They're going to wherever the prey is, and that's why they're mixing in. Even the West Coast Pacific flyaway birds are a little bit different than the East Coast, because they tend to migrate in certain paths, but not so much for the owls. Now, this is where I do my work. So let me back up. Actually, in Project OwlNet, what we do is we use the same protocol and standards, and we collect data the same way to make the better data collection. So we use the same protocols throughout all the stations. Now, where do I do it? Well, this is called Big Chico Creek Ecological Reserve. And if you can't really see, right at the top of that canyon, I can kind of see a little bit of white, and that's Mount Lassen. So these birds that we know that are coming from the north come maybe through the top of the ridge and use this Big Chico Creek, and they kind of migrate down the creek. Most of our work, most of our study for these owls is in the fall and the fall migration. The fall migration goes from about mid-October, October 10th or so, to November 20th. So that's when we know that they're migrating through, and they're coming through with pretty decent numbers. So the reserve now is around 8,000 acres, and it's Chico State property. It's part of the Chico State enterprise. Now, why do we capture these owls? Why? Well, it's important to get the data, especially with climate change and other issues. We need data to collect, to compare it for these owls. And the saw-whet owl is a species of special concern because it does nest up in the upper parts of the mountains, higher in elevation. If the climate's warmer, that higher will get pushed farther north, and they might get pushed out of the lower 48 of United States. So that's why we're trying to collect data. We're trying to get a lot of information, even though it's the most commonly banded owl. Because of that Project OwlNet, there's so much we don't know about these guys. All these owls that I capture, and this year I caught almost 100, and we'll talk about that, but I almost caught 100 owls this year. We still don't know where they nested, where they come from, where they spent their first year, where they spent the second year. So a lot more data needs to be gathered. So here is just a map of the reserve, and I have 3 owl stations. There's owl 3 on the upper left, owl 2, and owl 4. Most of our work is in owl 3, and that's a station. In the next scene, I'll show you a little video clip of that. It's a good spot because we get good numbers. It's about halfway on the side of the canyon, and it's more productive than owl 2 and owl 4. So we use that owl 3 station. So here's a quick little video clip. I'll truncate it a little bit, but. Okay. So we're setting up a series of nets. We have 4 nets up here at the station. We lay these 4 nets out, and then if we see over here, you can see there is a collar, and that's a little speaker system that plays the call of a male Northern Saw-whet Owl. And that collar brings the owls in, and it'll bring them to the nets, and then we'll retrieve them from the nets and bring them up to process them. So when we set up the nets, what I do is, the nets are kind of particular in the way that we set them up, but you always have to make sure that this. So I'm not going to show you the net. If you want to see the net setup process, the whole video is on YouTube. And it's hard to play a video through Zoom because the audio isn't connected. So you're hearing my speaker through the microphone. So now this is our net array. So you can see in the middle near that number 2, there's the speaker there. It's called the audio lure. We have a different one now. That one just wasn't working. And now it's a Fox Pro game collar. It was pretty expensive, but it works really well. We get good volume. And then I can control it from the station. So 200 yards away, I can make it go louder, go quieter, or change the calls. So we have 4 nets, net 1, 2, and 3 across the top. And there's the maple there. And then net 4 kind of goes perpendicular to those. Now, some of the equipment that we use when we're banding these owls. So we've got the pliers. That's to close the band on their leg, and a black light, which we'll talk about, the gauge for measuring the wing, scale, and we'll show you all these things later here. So here I'm in the process of showing and demonstrating to some volunteers the whole process. I've got the owl in what's called a bander's grip there, where my fingers are just kind of behind, and I'm holding its wings down. So gently with my pinky and my thumb, gently holding its wings down so it doesn't flap away or feel afraid. So those are the bands I use. And these bands are supplied by USGS. So if you're a bird bander, you can just, if you've got a license or permit, you send them an email and they'll send you these bands for free. The bands are called a size 4 short, and it's a unique band. Unlike the number is unlike any other band. So if you were to find a bird with a band, if you look at them, there's a website on there or a phone number where you can call and report that, and then they give you a little certificate. Congratulations. You've got this. You found this bird. It was banded in Canada or wherever it was banded by this person on this date. Now, of the band sizes we use, right now they made a new band for saw-whets because it's banded so frequently, and it's a shorter band. So it's called a 4 short or 4S. And so the first step that what we do is we put a band on their leg. And if for some reason it were to fly away, at least we would be able to band it and say, this bird was captured at this date. We don't know any other information, but this bird was captured at this date. We also get Western screech owls, and they use a little bit bigger, a 5 locking band. So you can see in this picture, this is my nets, and then the collar there. So what the bird will do is it'll come, the lure will bring it in, and then they just kind of hit the net and then fall into that little pocket. I check the nets every 30 minutes, and I check, and then if they're there, as I mentioned that little video clip, I'll bring them up to the station, and then we'll we'll band them. I'm gonna start this video. So now that it's dark, you can really see the pockets that the bird will fall into. And you can also hear our caller. So up here in the distance, you can see the caller. That's playing the call from male Northern Saw-whet Owl. Now, the data we collect. So, and this is the same data that all the Project OwlNets collect. And there's two really main things that we want to get is we want to figure out how old it is, and we want to figure out if it's a male or a female. So that gives us a lot of information. So if you look at the chart there, there's the band number, the species, the age, the sex, the wing chord, and then we collect on the far right. You can see those are feathers, and I'll describe that later, and I'll show you. So when we're sexing an owl, there's two measurements that we use to determine sex. The one measurement is called the wing chord, and that's basically from the wrist to the tip of the fingers. We use this gauge and we measure that, and then we measure its mass. So with a combination of those two things, and I know it seems like it's kind of sad that they're in the cup, it actually calms them down quite a bit. And so we put them in that cup and weigh them there. Now with those two measurements, we can determine whether it's a male or female. So my pointer doesn't work with, so I can't really point, but if you look on the left side of the vertical column there, you can see the wing chord. So if the owl had 128 wing chord, 128 millimeters, and it was less than 82 grams, it would be a male. But if you go all the way to the right, if it's greater than 89, it would be a female. So we use the wing and the mass, and we combine that numbers, discriminate together, and to basically determine its mass. And you can see the chart on the left here, the known sex of the Northern Saw-whet Owl. And they confirm this. They used blood samples to confirm that this is a pretty accurate chart. Sometimes we get a lot of unknowns, and those unknowns could be skinny females or heavy males too, or just undetermined. So to determine its sex, two measurements: its wing chord and its mass. Now, how do we age them? Well, aging them, it's so elegant, it's so beautiful. These owls, if you've ever worked with any other birds in banding, sometimes determining its age is very difficult. You might have to skull them, where you look and see if they're the ossified or it's like all, hard bone. There's lots of different techniques to age birds, but what we use is a molt, and it's so elegant how these owls do molt. And molting means shedding their feathers. So these are the primary flight feathers. So if you look in the middle, you see P1. P1 is primary flight feather 1. To the left is P2, and then all the way to P10. And then in the center again, you see S1, that's secondary. And then to its right is secondary 2, secondary 3, secondary 4, all the way to secondary 13. Okay, so just kind of a background of the flight feathers. So when an owl molts, so let me back up. If it's a hatch year owl, if it was born, like if we're banding it in November, and it was born sometime during the summer, all of its feathers would be uniform. So all the feathers are the same age, and you can really see there that they're the same age compared to this other picture. Do you see how they're a little lighter in the center and darker on the tips? So this is a hatch year bird because all the feathers are uniform. So in the notes, we would say uniform. Now we have this little fancy trick, and we use a black light. And if you saw in the picture before, the black light, we use it to illuminate the feathers. And they've got a chemical in their wings that's called porphyrin. And the porphyrin will illuminate under a black light, and that chemical will oxidize over time. So if it is a hatch year bird, they're all good and they're all about the same color. And in the next picture I'll show you, you can really see the difference. So this bird is a hatch year. It was born this summer. So we would record hatch year. Now, second year. Oh, it's just so, as I mentioned, it's so beautiful and elegant. What they do is they molt the tips. So those last few feathers near my left hand there, those are fresh. And then we have old in the center and fresh near the body. So they molt the tips, the outer part of the wings, and then near the body, which kind of makes sense because they're scratching their wings on trees as they're flying, and they're maybe a little wear near their body. So if that bird has fresh on the outside, old on the center, and fresh near the body, then that would be a SY or a second year, or a HY, which is hatch year. So if it's uniform, hatch year. If it's got fresh on the tips and near the body, then that would be a second year. And remember I mentioned the porphyrin. Look at the difference with this, how it really glows. Those fresh feathers really fluoresce, illuminate a lot better. So we've got the fresh feathers on the tips and then old in the center. Then after that, it just molts as as needed. So the first 2 years, we can get very accurate measurements, but then after that, it tends to molt as needed. So we've got at least 3 generation feathers in here. You can see the old, the O, fresh with the F, and then the very old. There you can see they're kind of rusty red rather than brown. So we would call this a bird we'd call it an after second year. Okay, after second year. And then look at the porphyrin here. So you can see we've got fresh and we've got old. And then near that center, the primary one right in the center, that's fresh. And then there's a VO, there's an old, and then right next to that, there's a very old. You can see there's almost no fluorescing there. So that's how we determine. So it's sex by its wing chord and its mass, and then its age by how it molts, and it's called a molt limit. So I'm going to show you this little video clip, and then it goes over the whole process of what happens when I band here. So here are the bands. Now when it's time to open up a band, what I do is I line up that little slice with the pliers here, and then I open it up. Put the string aside, and then I put a band in the pliers like this. That's it. You can start. Okay, so I line it up that way. Okay, so I've got an owl in the back here. So I'm going to feel through the bag, just if I can see which way he's facing. It looks like so he's facing this way. His eyes are looking, and that's where his bill is. So I'm going to come in behind him and then hold him in what we call as a bander's grip. So I'm holding the wings down, and I'm going to slide him out. Right there. So, sweet little guy. This is a Northern Saw-whet Owl. Okay, so first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to put a band on his leg. So I'm going to hold his leg out. I've already got the band in the pliers. So I can hold it with these my pinkies. And then I just close a little bit. And I roll it so we don't get feathers stuck in there. And then I open it up. You can see a few feathers in here. So then I just roll it through here. And then I come at it one more time at a different angle with pliers and close it up completely. Okay. Now it's closed completely. So the next thing I'm going to do, yep, that looks good. Next thing I'm going to do is I'm going to get its wing chord. So I'm going to get the measurement of the wing from basically the wrist to the tip of the wing. Mosquito here. So I put the gauge underneath the wing and I elevate it and I lift it up, tuck it here. I lift it up so it's not laying flat. I want to keep a natural curve. So it looks like it's about 140. Okay. So the wing chord is 140. I look at its tail, and it looks like there are 3 bars of feathers on the tail. So 3 tail bars. And then I'll look and see the age of the feathers. And this looks like it's a hatch year to me, that they're all the same color and same age. Yeah. These could be fresh. So what I'll do is I will look with a black light. And sometimes it's a little bit harder. So I'm going to protect its eyes so it can't, doesn't damage it, but I'm going to look. Yeah, and the feathers are all the same color. So it's a hatchier bird. That was right. And there's the color underneath the wing. It's called porphyrin. The chemical in the wing that will kind of oxidize and age. So he's a hatchier because his feathers are all the same age. It was a little bit hard to tell here and here. These look really fresh, but looks like it's a hatchier. Okay, next thing I'm going to do is I'm going to weigh him. Put him in the cup here. The scale is zeroed out. I tuck its wings in here. I'm going to hold its legs just to keep them calm. And 82.9. So it's kind of light. The range is from about 70 to like 105, 75 to 105. And if you can zoom in on his face, you can kind of see, especially if I don't put quite so much light in there, beautiful colors. And they're a magnificent creature. Northern Saw-whet Owl. Sometimes when they're really agitated, we'll pet them and that'll kind of calm them down. But you can see he's not stressed out. He's pretty calm, just letting us do what we need to do. So this is a Northern Saw-whet Owl. So, oops, shouldn't have done that. Okay, so are we back here, Brian? We're good? Okay. So one thing that I wanted to show you is that chart, the numbers. So his numbers was 140. So the wing chord was 140. So if we look on the left, 140, and then across, its mass was 82. So basically less than 86. So the mass of that guy was unknown. We didn't know if it was a female or a male, but we would call that owl unknown because it was 140 on the left and then 82 for the mass. Okay, so let's get forward here to where it was. Now, this year, well, how did this year go? So as in the bio, it talks about that the station opened up in 2005, and we can see the pattern of the owls, the total number of owls that we got, and then what the real important thing is, because some nights like this year, we were rained out. I think 12 nights, and last year we weren't rained out at all. Because we got all our rain in October, November. So what really is important to do is to look at the line. So even though the numbers, like in 2017, we had over 160 owls, to look at the line, and that line is basically number of owls, owls caught per 100 hours. So some years are better, some are not. They tend to follow 4-year patterns. But not always. And if we look this year, we got 45 after hatch year and 49 hatch year. So it's about 50-50. But look at 2017. Look at all those hatch years. So that was a year where we had there was a lot of prey, and that those mamas fledged a lot of babies. And if we look, this is this year also. If we look, the owls captured, that 18 number says it was a decent year, but not our best year. Now, one of the main things that we do as owl banders or bird banders working with birds is we want to recapture an owl or a bird that has been banded somewhere else. So that's like the gold mine for us if we get that, because that tells us a lot of information: where it was banded, its migration. Now, Dawn Garcia, who opened up the station in 2005, some of you may know her. Her hypothesis was that possibly that these owls are following the north-south pattern, and like the Pacific Flyway. And well, since 2005, we've had actually 4 foreign recoveries. We've had 4. We've had 3 foreign recoveries. Sorry. So one of them was in Montana, and if you can see that right in there in Montana. That owl there in the center, Bitterroot Valley. That owl flew over 600 miles, and it came to us in 35 days. So that shows, and from a westerly migration, and it was banded in the fall, and 35 days later, it came to us. The next one we caught was in the Hitchcock Nature Center, and that's in Iowa, right in the center there, right in Iowa. It was banded in 2013, and it came to us a full year later. So we think it probably wintered maybe in Iowa, maybe a little farther south, flew up north, up into Canada, and then came down the Pacific. So these owls are moving all over, they're mixing, they're going wherever there's food, they're opportunists. And then the other one is Cobble Hill, and that's the white arrow in the upper left in British Columbia. And that was just 2 years ago. And it came to us 1 full year. Now, only two of our owls have been captured from others. And we've banded almost 1,600 owls since the station opened. So almost 1,600 owls, and only 2 of them have been recaptured. And they've both been captured from Rocky Point Bird Observatory, and that's right below the white arrow, the upper red dot there, right on the Juan de Fuca Strait. And they caught 2 of our owls. And then we've traded, and we've actually caught one of the British Columbia. So just with those 3 owls, it shows that there is some north-south, but there's also east-west, and they're mixing, and they're moving all over. Now, as I mentioned, if you capture or you get a bird that has a band on it, they'll send you this nice little certificate, like a thank you for, and then just information. The one that I got was Andrews, and it was in Cobble Hill, British Columbia. Now, in addition to doing the fall migration study, we also put up some nest boxes. Remember, I mentioned earlier that that they sometimes triple clutch. And one of the thoughts that I was thinking is maybe at our lower elevation, about 1,700 feet, they have their first clutch of eggs, and then they go halfway up later, and then halfway up. Well, we haven't had saw-whets, but we've had screech owls. And so we have 20 boxes placed in Big Chico Creek Ecological Reserve and in Plumas National Forest. And here's a mama. Now, this is one good mama. 5 years in a row, she's nested and produced 16 owls. So she's a good mama, same owl. And you can see some of her babies just before we banded them. And they're funny, they're super cute, but I have a picture of a saw-whet baby at the end. So they're cute, but they're not saw-whet cute. Now, crossing my fingers, we haven't had any saw-whets. Hopefully we will soon. Now, not only do I catch owls, here is a Humboldt's flying squirrel. And the first time I caught a flying squirrel, in the net, and we do get them, and I have a little video that I'm going to show you. I was literally jumping up and down. As a kid, growing up in the 70s, I remember reading Ranger Rick magazine and about the flying squirrel, and I always wanted to see one. And the first time I got one, I was so excited. He was actually nesting in one of my boxes. And you can see the pole here. If you follow the pole back towards the tree, you can see my hand holding the little GoPro stick. What happened is he jumped out of the box as I stuck the camera in to see if there's an owl nesting. He jumped out and scurried to the back, and I was able to snap a picture of him there. So here's a little video clip of an extraction of a Humboldt flying squirrel. Be sure you watch the end. Now, he's not really that tangled. He's more holding on than he is tangled. So he's pretty, he's just kind of holding on. And I'm kind of like doing a cat's cradle, opening it up. And then just his hips are through there, and he's going to fall through, and he's going to jump to the ground, and watch what happens when he's on the ground. You can really see those flaps of skin. There you go. Now watch this. Boing, boing. Boing, boing, boing. Yeah, they have to hop because of the way that they have the skin connected between their appendages there. So they hop. So not only do I get flying squirrels, I also get northern, actually ash-throated flycatchers nesting. You can see the flycatcher nest there. And then that's the nest of a northern or a Humboldt's flying squirrel, not a northern. So I also get bats. And I don't like to catch bats so much because they're a little hard to extract. This is a pallid bat, and they do bite. Pallid means pale, so you can see the paleness of its chest there. Now these bats, I always get them in the first week to 2 weeks, I think, before they move on. And you can see here, that's one of their favorite food items is that Jerusalem cricket. So they'll be close to the ground, and sometimes I catch them. Here is the pallid bat crawling up the tree. Now bats can't take off from the ground because they can't get air underneath their wings. You might have seen, I've seen in social media videos of bald eagles like flapping on top of the water. They can't take off from the water because they've got that water basically right up to their wings. So they have to go to the shore, then flap. It's kind of the same thing with pallids on the ground. So they have to climb, and watch what happens. He's climbing up the tree. And then flies off. Now I also get ringtail cats. So near the banding station, we found probably a nest of a ringtail cat. And when it's a little slow at night, we'll go, hey, let's go find the cat. And we'll go to the ringtail cat. They're related to a raccoon, but skinnier. And you can see on the right, the video, you'll see him just jumping here. And when we look at it, we can see that every owl has a different look. This one in the center is kind of a little cross-eyed, just kind of relaxed, and you saw the real fiery one earlier, and then this one's kind of alert. So she was petting it, and he was really, really relaxed. So a couple of my volunteers that have helped me in the past couple of years, and you can see Dawn Garcia in the lower left-hand side. She's the one that opened the station. So I promised saw-whet babies. This is what saw-whet babies look like. So not only are they cute, as adults, they're super cute as babies too. So that is all of my presentation. So if you have some questions, if you want to put those in the chat, and let me end this here. Good, we're back. So if you have some questions that you want to put in the chat, or you can ask them. I'm okay. Either or. You can unmute it.
I think I might have to change the settings, but if people could post them in the chat, that would be the best. We do have one, Ken, already. Do you think it's possible that there are so few recaptures of the saw-whets because owls have learned to be wary of nets?
Yeah, I think that is possible. Yeah, that they're wary, but we do get recaptures in the same season. So it's not always. So yes, they are wary. It's infrequent we get the same season recap. I caught one this October, and then I was out doing some spring monitoring in right at the beginning of March, end of February, and I recaptured him. So yes, they do get wary. Sometimes these feisty ones will do the opposite. I've caught the same guy, same female, 4 times in one night. And finally, I just kind of left her in the bag, wait till I closed the net, and then I released her just because she just kept on. She was just so agitated by the whole thing. She wanted to fight. And so recaptured her quite a few times. Now, another thing is I'm always looking for volunteers. And I know it's a little bit of drive, but if you guys want to set up a field trip in October, November, bring a group, maybe, you definitely have to have some hotel rooms or stay with a friend in Chico, and could come out and just see in person the whole process.
It seems like a wonderful experience. Absolutely. I think you did kind of touch on this, but Helen Manasian asked year-to-year recaptures. You mentioned, you caught that one female 4 times in one night, but do you get the same birds every year when you're monitoring?
Yeah, every year we'll get probably 4 or 5 recaptures from the prior year, and more from the same year, and then a few from the prior year. This year, we got a recapture that was 5 years old. So it came to us 5 years later, and that is really exciting. I mean, that shows there's always questions like, are you mean to the owls? Well, no, their owl safety is the #1 priority. I'll sacrifice a $300 net and tools so the owl isn't injured. And we've only had one injury since 2005, and it was rehabbed and fine. It just got a little twisted in the net. So really good results. It confirms that we do get recaps from prior years, and 5 years was a long time. So that was pretty exciting that we recaptured one from 5 years ago.
Yeah, absolutely. We have a question. What is their prominent prey?
Yeah, so mammals, so deer mice and those voles, that one plump little short-tailed rodent. They really like those, and those voles are big. They're 50 grams plus. So yeah, that's their dominant food, and it's mammals, so they don't eat insects or reptiles, just those deer mice and voles. So if it's a bad year for deer mice and voles, they'll be affected. Now, screech owls, that mama that had 5 years of babies, they're a little bit more flexible. The first couple of years that I got, we would look in their box and see lots of prey cached of voles and mice. And then the last year, there must not have been very many mice and voles, because there weren't cached prey in there, but there were feathers. And there were probably spotted towhee feathers. So she started eating spotted towhees because there weren't a lot of rodents.
Wow, very resourceful. I'm going to kind of combine 2 questions here from 2 different people. What other owls show up in your study area? And then the second part is, who preys on the saw-whet?
Sure. Yeah, good question. So at our station, we've detected California spotted owl, great horn owl, and great horn owls frequently will hear them calling. We know, and barn owls and screech owls. We know that flammulated will fly near, even long-eared owls will fly in the area, but we've never captured either of those. And we've also captured early, we were doing some passerine, like banding, songbirds, and we got a pygmy owl. And then this year, it was exciting, but I was sad about it. I heard a barred owl. And if you're not familiar, barred owls, their range is expanding and they like to eat saw-whets. So in the East Coast, they have a problem with them, that they'll sit near the net, and when a saw-whet goes in there, they'll go to the net and pull it out and eat it. So we weren't real excited about, excited to hear it, but not excited that they weren't in the area. And it just called a few times and then moved off. So thankfully, it wasn't a problem. But some stations, especially in the East and the Midwest, they have a real problem. And even in British Columbia, they have a real problem with barred owls.
Yeah, thank you for sharing that. We have a question from Jim. How much does the 4S band weigh?
You know, I would say not even grams. We're talking milligrams. I could look it up, but they're aluminum, and they're so light that they don't even they don't affect. I could look it up, but they don't affect the owl at all. And they're feathers. So yeah, very, very light. But we're talking milligrams, not grams.
Sure. And what does it take to set up a saw-whet station? Do you, I'm assuming you work as a team, or is this something you can do on your own?
Yeah, so we're open 6 nights a week. Now, I have another licensed bander or sub-permitted bander under my license that comes out, and usually we have 5 people, 5 assistants. I like a couple assistants, not too many, because then it becomes too social. But if you wanted to open up a station, what would it take? Well, probably some money for some of the materials. The nets are a few $100s. Probably $1,000 would be enough for materials, and including a collar. To open up a station, you'd need a licensed bander, and yeah, that's really about it. So if you know a licensed bander that is permitted for owls, and did I answer your question? Was that
I think it was
Lois?
yeah. I hope so. If people want to clarify or ask more questions, please go ahead and put them in the chat. But I was kind of wondering, why is it the USGS are the ones that issue bird bans?
Isn't that funny? Yeah, it's just something that's been that way forever. Maybe the USGS was doing the research 100 years ago, but they've controlled it for years and years and years and years. And they provide the research. We send all the data to them, and then they publish the data. And you can research. Scientists can research the data. What's the how many owls have been caught, or whatever species that you want. You can get that information.
Yeah, it's very valuable. Absolutely. Who issues the banding licenses?
So USGS.
They do.
So yeah, for me to get my license, I worked under someone. I worked under Dawn. She mentored me. For 5 years, I handled probably 100 owls at least. She vouched that she felt comfortable with my skills. I had another letter of recommendation from another person. And then I was issued a license. So now that I have a license, I have a master permit for all owls. I can sub-permit other people. So I've got 3 other people sub-permitted that work with me. And, and all I had to do is send a letter to USGS. It says, I vouch for this person. They show that they have skill, that they're careful. Please offer them, a permit, so they get a sub-permit, and then they can work under my permit. And it's through USGS.
Yeah, that's awesome. Yeah, thank you. Let's see, we have a few more questions. Let's see, do you have more information on the Ukiah station? Well, there isn't one, but
not that I know of, no.
How, I guess, what would be a good way to contact you in case people want to set something up in Ukiah?
Yeah, so my email, KSOBON, I can put it in the chat there.
Okay, yeah.
Everyone.
Yeah, while you're entering your email there, I'll go ahead and pose the next question.
Yeah, so there's my email. I'm sorry, ksobon1@comcast.net. And if you'd like to volunteer, I know there is a high school student in the meeting today. I haven't met her, but I know she wants to volunteer. She's a colleague. Her aunt, I think, is a colleague of mine. So she wants to volunteer. So if there's other people that would like to volunteer, you've got my email. I'm starting looking for people in September. So send me, if you want to come, send me an email in September. That's when I'm starting to develop my team and set my schedule and plan for that.
Great. Yeah, that kind of preludes to one of the questions here. Do you involve your middle school students, your colleagues, and their families? So
yeah, I had one of my middle school students come up this year. So that was real fun to have him come up, and he was very excited to handle an owl. It's pretty infrequent because I tell my students that you're going to have an adult. Because I'm doing scientific research, you're going to have adult that's going to watch you. So I can't be your teacher. You can participate, but I can't control your behavior. I'm not going to pick you up and bring you up there and bring you home. So it's a little bit less frequent, but it was great to have that this year. And yeah, families definitely are welcome to come up too.
that's wonderful. Let's see, we have a question here. How old are the saw-whets when they get their adult plumage?
Yeah, so they get there right after they fledge. And if you saw that one picture where it was that kind of the reddish, they have that plumage for 2 months, a month and a half, and then they get their adult plumage basically when they fledge. So they have that reddish color fuzz until they fledge. And when they fledge, they get their adult plumage. So we'll get an owl that probably technically is 3 months old, and it has its flight feathers. There is a little bit of the red in there. They have a little bit more red than normal, but about 3 months old, they'll have their regular adult flight feathers and plumage. And when they're a month old, they're basically the same size. And when they fledge, they're a little bit heavier. Generally, the mama will fatten them up before, because there's a lot of mortality. With that screech owl, she's produced 16 owls just in my boxes. So, the population of screech owl isn't going through the roof. So there must be that much mortality, from predators, from other owls, other things eating them.
Maybe someone requested to see the baby saw-whets again.
Sure.
Yeah, that might be a good one to send us out on. But if people have more questions, oh yeah, and this slide has your email on it, it looks like, as well. So yeah, we want to thank you again, Ken, for taking the time to talk to us this evening. And yeah, truly amazing videos and pictures, very educational.
Thank you.
Thank
That
you.
was good fun. I enjoy, if you want to support the research, you can look us up, altacal.org, and donate to the research. If you want to come and take a look, there's my email. And it's not too expensive, to start a station, but it does take a bit to get it running, to keep it up, because of net. And if I get a bat or a squirrel, it'll shred a $300 net. So but
Yeah. Well, thank you again, Ken, and thank you everybody for attending this evening. And yeah, we'll see you all maybe in April, and if not, hopefully you get some folks out there in September, October, November. So
thank you.
Yep. Have a good evening, everyone. All right. Thanks. Bye, Ken.